Brexton, what's up, man?
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm good. How about you? How's you moved, right? San Francisco treating you well?
I did. Back in SF. It's good. We moved because my fiance Allie, we were gonna say she joined Vercel in January, and they're Vercel is based in SF, and so she's leading all of their startup efforts. So if you're a startup and you need Vercel credits or help with Vercel, she's there. But we're loving SF. I think it is an order of magnitude more quote unquote AI than New York was, which is very fun.
For sure. All right, sick man. Excited to catch up. So Ohara, you're the co-founder of Ohara, which is a social vibe coding platform that makes it really easy to create and launch apps through simple prompting. So I think we also had you on Internet Explorers maybe 5 months ago. I think it was just before you launched Coins. So I'm curious to get kind of
Mm,
the quick download on what the last 5 months have been like and what the current state of the product is.
yep. What was I gonna say? Uh, Things are going better than we could have asked for. I think like all of our efforts over the past 5 months have just been constantly improving our code generation. So I think it was like a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, I forget. We completely re-architected our code gen system. And then so that was kind of like Ohara 2.0. And so it was just like a step function better than what our code generation worked. Um, I mean, recently we've been hitting rate limits across the board because registrations, everything from like user acquisition to retention are completely just skyrocketing. And I think the very interesting thing is like, I don't know, I've been hearing a lot of predictions around where vibe coding will go, blah, blah, blah. But I think the human desire to create will constantly be there. And so it's good. I'm glad our product is resonating with people. I think we have a lot of interesting announcements and releases coming this week and next to bring out software engineering agents to more people. But yeah,
Nice.
I really can't complain.
That's great. Yeah, I saw. Yeah, so you shared a chart recently of registrations, and that it's gone
Hmm.
basically vertical over the last maybe like week or two, and with it you tweeted
Yeah.
the most painful lesson about building product is that the highest leverage thing for growth and retention isn't more big features, but 1,000 small optimizations. So can you say more on that? Like, did this growth really just come out of nowhere after a bunch of iterative development, or like what?
Yeah,
Yeah, what can
there's
you do there?
there's a couple things. Oh, I mean, number one, I think you can't like conflate um there's a lot of potential variables you can conflate when it comes to like building a good consumer product, but there's like a lot of like non-obvious stuff. So for example, um I actually, for what it's worth, I think this is historically my really big critique about products in Web3, which is I think there's like something about like, oh, because tokens are a really good attention mechanism, you can ignore all of the polishing that goes into a really good consumer product. And the polishing that comes with it is like very boring, right? So, for example, a lot of the optimizations we did were things that like you wouldn't expect to contribute to really big lift. So, for example, in the past, we would basically we would let people prompt if they weren't logged in as a user or they hadn't registered yet. You would still be able to submit a prompt for the first time and then kind of like see the app being generated, but then we wouldn't ask people to sign up until like the very end of the funnel, right? So like right before they want to publish their app. But basically, if you think about it from a user flow perspective, you're essentially asking the user to do the highest friction possible thing before they're asked to sign up, right?
Right.
So then we like one small thing we did was we just like moved the sign up modal like way earlier into the process. And then other things, right? Like so for example, making sure that when a user publishes an app, we don't kind of ask them to put in the effort to like copy and paste the link and then like pull up their Twitter. We like automatically have that custom share modal to make sure that like their apps immediately get funneled into Twitter, or wherever they want to share, whether it's iMessage app clips or whether it's whatever emails with their teams. Um, and then like what's gonna say, even like things that I think people kind of take for granted, things like Google Auth or things like making sure that your placeholder copy text is like very explicitly clear, because still like AI products are really net new behavior for people. So making sure that it's very dead obvious like you're constantly screaming at your user what your product is supposed to do, and then you're constantly holding your user's hand throughout the funnel, right? And even like for onboarding, like making sure that like one thing that we say a lot internally is that we want to minimize the forcing the user to type as much as possible when they're onboarding or like registering for an account. So like things like auto-filling fields, whatever, right? So it's like a lot of these very boring and sexy things that contribute to like very like clearly non-trivial lift in like what makes a really good consumer product. And it's like not the exciting things you think about, like, oh, like let's add this major crazy feature like multi-sub agents or whatever. Like users don't really inherently care about that, right? They just care about being lazy, and they should, you know, and we shouldn't allow them to be lazy. So whatever. Yeah,
For sure. I guess yeah. I'm curious what like how the quality of stuff getting created on Ohara these days is. Like, are you seeing, you know, as foundational models improve, you know, maybe vibe coding continues making its way through the cultural zeitgeist? Like, are you seeing more creative people with more interesting ideas and better tools, like kind of show up and create stuff? Or
yeah, where is it? I think there's like kind of a linear correlation between like how how good is the infra and the models and the code generation versus like how complex people's ideas get, if that makes sense. Because like if you're a user and you're using code generation for the first time, let's say you were vibe coding on Ohara or Cursor or Replit Lovable like 5 months ago or even 8 months ago, and then you immediately start running into walls. I think you implicitly start simplifying the type of stuff that you want to generate, just because you're kind of aware of what the limits are. Versus now, which is like the limits are a lot further along, and so you're coming up with like more complex ideas to kind of test the boundaries. Um, in general, the model quality. So we like at Ohara, we don't fine tune models, we don't train models. Like I'm very against it for many reasons. And any early stage startup or any startup in general that isn't a foundational model lab that says they train their own models, I call horseshit for lots of reasons. But with that said, the pace of how great these foundational models out the box that they're growing or like getting better is absolutely insane, right? We like right now, I think the top models for code generation are like, I mean, Claude 4 is incredible, but also like Gemini 2.5 is phenomenal. I think OpenAI is going to come out with something in the next month. Grok 4 is apparently slated right now. So I'm excited. And then also like there's a lot of infrastructure stuff that goes into making sure that like people's experience are really good. So for example, and again, this is more of the boring stuff that our users hopefully are completely abstracted away from. But like as a software engineering agent, in order to do the things that users want, like we need to have really good virtual machines that come pre-packaged, right? Make sure that like if they want to install any APIs or basically third-party libraries, it works really, really well. And how do you optimize the speed for that so that like the agent, when it's downloading something from the internet, it's not spending 5 minutes, it's spending 2 seconds, right? So as a lot of these tweaks here and there basically kind of improve, I do think that like we have been seeing way higher quality outputs coming from our users, especially for more B2B use cases too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess how are you thinking about the competitive landscape today? I think you know, it seems like every few weeks you see kind of another more kind of general purpose tool like yours come along. I think we're starting to see more kind of vertical specific attempts at this, like, you know, some teams building the TikTok for gaming. And then I think like eventually you're ultimately probably competing with Cursor and Claude Code as well, right? So I'm curious how you think about the competitive landscape. I think maybe when we talked last, you were really leaning into like distribution and the need to like help creators go viral. So yeah, curious what the updated answer to that is, and Peace, jump in.
Well, I was going to say even Framer or Lovable or something, you know, it's like,
yes.
So at what point does it make sense to be using Ohara?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So, okay, I'm gonna break it down. So I think there's like, when you look at the spectrum of like code generation products, right? You have, I think everybody agrees on the same end outcome, but everyone disagrees on timeline. And what I mean by that is like on the IDE side, you have like Cursor and Windsurf, who like have a very strong opinion of servicing developers today, right? Because only developers really use IDEs. And then I think you have the Bolts, Lovables, Replets, who have a very strong opinion of like actually servicing more of that like solopreneur kind of like founder, Squarespacey, Webflowy type of demographic, right? Like net new projects to be deployed as like businesses, right? Then you have I think like more on our end where we're like, hey, look, like I don't want users to even know what a database or auth is, right? Like I think like it should, well, they shouldn't even know what APIs are. It should be completely abstracted away. And this is like the more pure non-technical consumer side. This is where Ohara is right now. And then the last thing is there's like a fourth category, which is kind of where the Devin factory sits. And that's where they're very opinionated about like people managing a swarm of software engineering agents within an org, right? So, and then I think you have the crypto specific stuff. So, and the crypto specific stuff, even within that, there's like a whole spectrum, right? So, like, I think you have, I think a lot of people compare Ohara to like Poof or Dev.Fun, which is fine. I think they're doing great stuff. I don't know if I really compare Ohara to that. And then you have like projects like Farcade, which I'm like a really big fan of, which is like kind of that TikTok kind of gamified thing. So when it comes to like this idea of software creation, I think the first thing I want to ask is like, what drives the most retention, right? And like we have very clear data about this now. So like the information released in an article recently about what products actually have the strongest 6-month net retention from a revenue perspective of all the code gen products. And like Lovable and Replit and Bolt are actually like are at the very far bottom, right? Versus like a Cursor or a Claude Code, which literally have 2x their attention. And when you think about why, it's like because these products are more integrated kind of into like a person's knowledge work day to day, right? And so, and then basically the way we've been able to drive retention at Ohara, like from the pure consumer perspective, it's not because it's necessarily driven, like inserted into a user's knowledge workflow. It's more because like we actually provide incentives for people to come back every week to make an app and make money. So we have this concept of contests where we are clearly driving weekly retention. And again, like I still reiterate my point, like the purpose of Ohara from a consumer perspective is you should be able to make an app. We should be able to focus on distribution and make you money, right? And so like that's working. Now I think one of the really big things that we've been beta testing a lot, which has been awesome, and it's gonna come out publicly pretty soon. I mean, I'm not teasing anything like revolutionary, but right now Ohara only works at 0 to 1 code bases. But now you'll be able to actually use Ohara on pre-existing code bases, right? So deploy Ohara like internally at your organization to be able to work on like your pre-existing GitHub repos, and it will be able to do that too, right? And so I think again, like the number one thing for me is like not only how do we increase distribution for our users, but also how do we get Ohara to be one of the most, if not the most high retention tool from even like a day-to-day use case. Because again, like I think the danger of like a lot of these no-code tools is that people use it once. They kind of deploy their own like Webflow website and they like call it a day, right? Which like isn't kind of like the type of platform I want to build. So anyways, there's a lot there.
You clearly don't want to just be competing for like the long tail of builders who actually don't really have any ambition or like creative ideas. They just want to kind of fuck around with something and launch something, and obviously like your platform fails if that's all you have. So
I don't want novelty product market fit, which is the majority of AI products right now, right?
I'm super curious if I'm launching a product on Ohara. I have a coin that's associated with it, and you're doing weekly contests. Am I able to iterate my product weekly and enter in as the same coin, or is like every deployment's like a new thing? And
So weekly contests serve actually a more specific purpose than like weekly retention. So the short answer is no. But the purpose of contests was, I think we kind of realized very early on that uh, if we acknowledge that tokens are an attention mechanism, how do I put this? I think we take the opposite approach of Zora, which is like, and I think what Zora is doing is awesome. And I don't think Zora is meant for this purpose. But you can't say one token is special if every token is special, right? So we basically shifted our efforts to say, at any given point of time, Ohara is concentrating all of its distribution attention behind like one or two tokens, right? To make sure that like it actually means something, right? And like and I think that's kind of like the core thing, which is like we kind of realized like before we had contests, everybody was launching a token, but like none of it would really get traded or like get high market caps, which doesn't really appeal to kind of that speculator persona, right? And then we also like want to provide outsized outcomes for the builders that actually like show up every week, right? And so that was actually the main reason driving behind contests, and thus far it's been proving to be a pretty damn good idea. But it's all about concentration of attention. But yeah, every week is a new contest, so like you can't resubmit an old app because we will like our team manually cuts out not only old apps but also like submissions that are like maybe not relevant and they don't follow the contest theme, blah blah blah.
Got it. Yeah, you need your runners, man. Your launch pad at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. So last question, and by far the most important one: were you actually a professional hot dog eater? Is that true?
In I used to do professional competitive eating in high school, and then you know,
what's your record? What's your record?
42 in 10 minutes for hot dogs. But then basically, I think that's a non-trivial reason of why I got into college. And then once I got into college, I slowed down on the eating side. And then during the pandemic, I kind of picked it up slightly when all of us were kind of stuck in our houses. So I would do all of those. I would basically pick like a fast food restaurant and then eat one of every item on the menu. And then record myself doing that. Yeah.
You're a hero.
Yeah. And so I'm a massive fan of the July 4th Joey Chestnut competition. It's he's the world's greatest athlete. He will be the greatest athlete ever recorded. He has even beyond LeBron longevity. He's nuts.
We could not get into that argument because I hear you, but that's a hard thing to agree with.
Look, I will say I'm a massive LeBron fan, and it's likely LeBron will retire in like 1 to 2 years. Joey will not retire.
Right.
I promise you, for another 10, 15 years.
He's gonna be like 60 years old, crushing 80 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Yeah.
He got interviewed this recently, and he literally said like he was asked if he would retire soon, and he was like, literally not until the wheels fall off. Right. Like he will keep on doing this once a year forever.
Okay,
that's wild.
And I'm a fan.
I know we said that was the last question, but I have to ask one more question, and that was, if you were to make a LinkedIn blog post about what hot dog eating contests taught you about building software and tokens, what is the carry through that you have?
Efficiency. And what I mean by this is so there's I can't believe I'm fucking talking about this in a good way. So there was like a very clear hockey stick curve around even like Joey Chestnut's competition, like a hot dog eating ability, right around the late 2000s, where people discovered something called the Solomon method of like eating hot dogs. And it literally went from like he was able to crush maybe something around like 25, 30, and it like rocketed to like 60. Like over the course of like 2 years, right? And so one of the first things you learn about competitive eating is like, yes, like a lot of it is like stamina, expanding your stomach, like mentality, whatever, like 95% of it is like understanding and like learning the right method. And so like, and it's a different method per food, right? So like how you crush hot dogs is completely different from like how you'd crush like pasta or burgers or what have you. And like you can literally look this up. If you look up the Solomon method around competitive eating, it was like a massive exponential hockey stick curve unlock for competitive hot dog eaters. And it was like one of the first things I did. Like if you like the best competitive eaters, YouTube and research the correct methodology for that food before they enter, and then they practice it, right? And so I don't know if it has much to do with code gen, but I will say I am glad we didn't waste our time doing like nonsense stuff like training or fine tuning our own models. Maybe that's the lesson. I don't know.
It's great. I mean, I have something to Google now. I got to know about the Solomon curve. Is that right?
Yeah, the Solomon method.
Yeah. I love efficiency, middle out supremacy. So let's go.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate jumping on. I think, you mentioned you have a couple of releases coming up this week and next, so keep your eyes open for that. Excited to have you back on soon.
Awesome. Chat to you guys.